Hey everybody, I finished the locking lidded box body, and again I mentioned that we're not talking about kind of beginner stuff here, so it's kind of standard hollowing, crack the core off, and then I cleaned up with a knife. And it's a little thick in one spot, but I think when it dries, it'll lighten up and be pretty nice. One of the things too that can happen is the inside ledge, can be trimmed a little bit with a knife. A little bit, and that's probably important to do because I want to feel this inside. The inside of that is if we think about the top of the ledge, and then the inside is kind of like this, kind of a wedge shape. And I'm now going to make the lid, and you can see.
Put it in front of your shirt so it'll focus better.
That triangular wedge shape.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have another vertical grain piece set up, and this time I'm going to run a smaller mandrel because of the size here that I'm working with. I should probably bandsaw that down a little bit. But I won't. It'll be all right. And so I'm going to attach my mandrel, and then I'll have the mandrel on the knob side so that I can actually take it off the lathe and fit it to make sure I have the diameter the right size.
Is that a bit thick? Seems so thick.
It's thick, but you need to accommodate for the spikes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then the handle.
Yep,
right?
and then the handle, so not so much. And a good thing to do if you're doing plates or flat stuff like this lid is to measure your mandrel tangs and write it down on your mandrel so that you got 5/8 of an inch. You have to go below 5/8, otherwise when you undercut, you're gonna hit your tool on the spike, and bad things will happen. But I will take a little bit of this off. Just to save myself a little turning. And then like I said before, you kind of let it sit for a couple minutes so that it gets used to the idea. My mandrel is about ready to blow apart. I'm going to have to replace it very soon. Surprising how long they last. Okay. So. Yeah.
I think I'm at 10% or something.
10%? Well, you can plug in.
Is there where's the plug?
I got it.
Okay. Should have plugged it in when we had the
You
chance.
didn't look at that triple decker one too.
Oh yeah. Well, that one's not very long.
No?
Okay.
Okay. That's all we got.
Yep.
Unless you want to run upstairs. Huh?
We'll just try to make do and see what happens. Okay.
All right. Hand me that pencil right there. All right, so same as before. I'll make sure to center that. Time for a new mandrel. Looks pretty rough. Hopefully it lasts. Okay, so I'm gonna work the inside. I'll work the outside a little bit first. No, I'll work the inside first. Now, the smaller mandrel, the knot that I have set up on here is adjustable. And so I'm going to tighten up I'm going to change the throw of the pedal a little bit so that I have enough distance to get a good rotation. Yeah, I think that's it. So flattening this, get a lot of unturned area here, so. Whenever you're turning plates or flat material, things that are closer in line with perpendicular to the axis, you're going to want to swing your tool out a little bit and work along the surface and pivots, kind of like this. I can fix that, Jasmine.
Yeah. Thanks.
So, remember, you're just pivoting and cutting just under the surface at that 10 degrees or so angle. And so if you were to approach it this way, you wouldn't be able to pivot into across the surface. You'd be pivoting into the wood. And you can't really slide hooks. You need to pivot. So you're swinging out. And you may notice I'm kind of pumping or giving these little jolts to the cut. I've been doing this long enough that it's very habitual, and I have a great deal of tool control. So it's easy for me to do that, but at times when you're beginning, and I noticed this in class, a lot of people, they see that and they try to do it before they're ready. It's like kind of like popping a wheelie on a bike. You can't really do that right away. And I try to really limit that when I'm turning, just so people don't get the wrong idea and don't try it right away. It's just too much to add to the mix. If you can pump that lathe and not move the tool at all, you can see how stable that tool is. It's not really moving at all. And that's what you need before you can start kind of cutting in these motions. Otherwise, you can kind of just drag your tool along. And that's okay too, but it's a little bit of resistance, so if you can just back off just a little, it's enough. But it's always the same, it's at roughly 10 degrees across that point, or to that point, that arc, that ledge, and set up to cut just under the surface. This tool is a little bbit freshly made, and so it's slightly concave. When you scroll flat material, it goes concave. And then it's a little bit aggressive. So over time, I'll sharpen and kind of intentionally or sloppily put a convex on it. And then it's a little bit more easier to control, and you'll get a finer cut. That's especially nice on the insides of bowls. All right, so I flattened it. I need to set up. Now, this is where I could have spent a little bit more time. There's a little bit of a slope in this inside transition point, right where the divider is touching. It's sloped, so my box lid won't fit here. It's going to have to fit at the bottom of that slope. So I could have did a better job. It's too late now. So I set this up. And make a mark. Ooh. Got it right away. If you're off, then you just make more marks. You need to erase, take your tool, cut it. You want to make sure that you're very clear on what you need to do, what you're turning to. So that's the outer diameter. So I'm gonna have to turn all that away. That's where I was kind of going with my bandsaw. But I'll show you guys, there's a trick I can show you instead of bandsawing it out. I can just plunge, I can actually plunge a tool right through and just, it'll be a ring. I'm gonna stay away from the line just a little bit. Not everybody's going to have a bandsaw. one of these reverse grind hooks to do this job. I can tell my foot pedal needs to be up just a little bit more. It's a type of prusik knot. Halfway through. My drive strap is heating up, which is another indication that something's out of line. So it's a little bit like nesting. You're taking some off of one side and then the other side of the groove. You don't want the tool to get stuck inside. And what's going on right now too is I'm not having enough power or torque. The mandrel is quite small for this diameter where I'm cutting. Once I get this groove cut through and this ring turned off, it'll be perfect for this. But that's also why I'm having to push harder, because of the torque that I need. Not so bad. But I can definitely feel it. It's not quite as powerful as I'd like it to be. So I just want to see where I'm at here. We got about 1/8 of an inch left. I'll go back to the other side. We got some people in?
12.
The hardcore. Their brains aren't mush yet. lined up either, so it's pretty close. I can see the light there, so that's a pretty slick way of not having to bandsaw or axe if you have the right tool.
Makes a nice hat too.
Oops, I just threw it. All right.
Or a crown, perhaps.
A crown of wood. All right, now back to business here. Now I'm going to do some precision turning right to that line there. And I want it as parallel as possible because we have to make the inside or the underside, the groove and the top. And if it's sloped one way or the other, it won't fit. So we're going to need 1/2 an inch or 5/8 of an inch of material to do all of those, all that notching. So if this is sloped, it's not going to work. Now the gearing is better. Okay, so parallel. Let's see what we have here. Yeah, that's pretty good. Remember, there's a little bit of a slope in there. If I would have done better, I could have fixed it up. But I think that'll work.
You can't do a reverse slope to make it fit?
No, because the area that touches here is going to be way back here. Way back there. Okay. Now, I'm going to make the groove. If you have a really small hook, that will work nicely. But limited to depth. So I'm tipped way down, and I'm pivoting up into the wood, and it's fairly untapered, so that it's cutting equally on all the sides of that. Just like nesting, it takes a bit of force. So now I got it started, and then I have this tool. It's just a scraper. And I'm going to run that in. Now I have a bevel on one side, so I'm going to put a little bit of a burr for the cutter, and I'm going to cut with a spring. So I'm going to shove in a little bit, but let the spring do the scraping. And if you catch too much, it'll flip up. I can always run it upside down, which I'll do a little bit here too. And then when it's upside down, my downward pressure is making the cut. Oop. But when you're scraping, it's really important not to push the tool too deep into the wood. You have to gradually feed it in. So now here's the trick. You're just having to guess, you know, the depth is from, you know, the bottom there to over to the inside edge. And there's a thickness and a slope. So I'm just gonna kind of take a guess. It looks like it's a little bit more obtuse than what I have.
So this curve is going to follow the inside of the locking lidded box. Is that right?
The underside, correct.
This top,
Yeah,
this side
that's the
would go
underside.
fit the underside.
This needs to be at a 90. This inside, this one here, has to be straight down. That's what follows the top.
Right, and this one follows the inside.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody wanted to see a close-up of the scraper.
It's just a angle, no big deal. It could be sharpened at a 90 or have an angle, whatever. You can do the bevel on one side or the other, whichever way you prefer. But you're gonna set that up to make, so you make this, and then you understand what this is when you make the box. And then you make your lid. It cuts pretty nice when you have that burr. And now I'm gonna run at 90. I'm gonna drop it down just a little. Feed it up. And you want to take a look at how I'm standing too. I've stepped off the platform so I can get right at 90. And I'm still pumping with my left leg, just because that's what I'm used to. I think that's gonna do it. I'm gonna scrape just a little bit on this. It's cool, you can chase threads on pole lathes and stuff too. You can do all kinds of things you wouldn't normally think about. All right, so now I have to hollow. Simple enough. This one. remember, a lot of this is going to get cut away. So I want to just come as close as I can to it. Probably like there. And kind of follow that shape of the groove. And I have to be deeper than the groove too. Otherwise, when I carve this away, there'll be all this material. So that also means that we should have an understanding of how all of this interrelates. The shape of the lid and the notch, how it interrelates with the reciprocal part on the box, but also the shape of the box and the shape of the lid. If I'm going to follow this dome, then it works. But if I had a really shallow flat box and I needed to hollow this extra deep, then you're going to have to make a domed lid. And so they're all interrelated. You kind of, and turning is like that. You have to kind of, you're always thinking ahead, many steps ahead. Not all the time, but a fair amount of time. All right, for the tools. I'm going to take a little bit more off of that. Yeah, I think that's good. I'll leave it there. For people following along, you got it? Easy beans, huh? So, now I need to decide the shape. And I want to make sure, so the depth here will be about there. And what shape should it be? We're going to follow this curve. It's kind of a flat, it kind of comes out, but then it kind of flattens out quite, that angle there. Maybe I should have taken some of this material down to make it come around and up on an angle. So I'm going to make a shallower slope to the top. And again, I can't go shallower than the depth of this. I think I'll be okay.
You're just guessing.
I'm just guessing. Guessing is better. That's how you learn. And at the same time, I'm going to leave a band, a circular band, so that I can make the handle as well. And I got the 5/8 of an inch, right? That's the mandrel tang depth. So I have a little ruler. It's
not this
upstairs.
thing?
Actually, I took it upstairs.
Oh, that one?
again. I got my Sasha gun. So 5/8 of an inch depth. So I gotta go that deep before I clear the tang. And then the handle, I can make the handle taller, right? And then there was that other line. The depth was like here. So I have enough room to flare it up and to leave a little toggle. I actually could have had a little bit more material. Remember when you actually
Yeah.
said, is it too thick?
Yeah.
It's like, it's barely thick enough. It's nice to have that handle stick out enough. So, and because of that split mandrel, I definitely don't want to catch, so I'm going to take my time. What do we have for time?
38 minutes.
Okay. So remember, I got 5/8 of an inch before I have to worry about the handle. But I'll start cutting it in now. Whoop. Maybe too big for a handle. This.
Oh,
A little
it's
bit
going to go
smaller.
all the way across?
Maybe this is it right here. So I can make it smaller. Can't make it bigger. So cautiously. A little smaller. Yeah. And I'm just going to double check the depth here. Yeah, okay. Because I want a flatter, a more flat top. I'm going to go a little bit more. Okay. So I'm gonna turn a nub down so I don't have to rip it with my saw. That's 5/8 deep. So I go below that. I'll be okay. Now, if I was brave, I could undercut that, but I'll leave it. I'll undercut it a little bit. And just carve it off. You could also leave a knob. Have a knoblet, you know, a knob handle. They did those in more in France and stuff, from what I understand. I'm gonna take this down a little bit. Oop. I'm too far below center. It's pulling my tool like I was talking about before. Undercut it a little bit. That off. And it would save me a lot of time if I could turn it, but I'm afraid I'll catch my tool. Just don't have enough. So we're gonna do more work over here now. So how's the charging?
I cannot actually tell without leaving the screen,
Okay, never mind.
but
Let me just get this off the board first.
yeah. Oh. Yeah, I always work better with two hands, but just can't do it. So, you can clean that up now or later. And then I probably won't make the handle itself. But I think folks get the idea. I could have made it a little smaller, I think.
So what I'll do is I'll cut this down with a saw and then flip it and rip it with a saw and make it a toggle handle like this. But what I will do though is fit the lawnmower outside. It sounds like it's in our yard.
Do you have the dehumidifier going?
Yeah.
That's the noise I hear.
It's humid in here. Just me working in here in this room raised the humidity almost 4 points. For those that haven't been following along, I control the humidity in here so I don't have to worry about cracking bowls. So cups in particular, end grains, really fussy to dry. So ooh, the grain's a little bit wily there. And you can see too, I probably should have hollowed a little bit more. It's okay, it's just wider area here. So I'm not laying it out completely, I'm just roughing. Being cautious about the grain so I don't split off a chunk that I don't want to. This is where it's nice to have knife grip training so you can use your knife effectively and not hurt yourself. I'm just going to lay out a couple reference marks here. And then expand them a little bit. So that's going to be the wide side. And I'll leave the narrower side about the same. Anybody have any questions?
Not so far.
Okay.
So did you see anyone make these at all before you made them?
No. No, I figured it out. There was really no one making them. Robin may have made a few, but he said he never really made too many. He kind of just stuck with bowls. You know, and some of this is just sort of common sense woodworking too, you know. I'm a professional woodworker all my life. You kind of...
But did you own one before you started making them?
No, I started making them before that.
You just saw it from a picture?
Yeah, I saw the pictures of the lid, locking lid in digital museums, digital archives and stuff. You'd see some clues, you know. But it wasn't until I owned and saw them in Sweden that I really took off. I only made like 3 or 4. And I was using them out of tangential wood too, you know, so it's like super problematic because they were warped. In fact, at the first Wed Fest, there was another exhibition of craft, and I was highlighted there, and I had one in display even, but it was, you know, compared to what I do now, it was like super shitty.
Someone wants to know if these were widespread or only in Scandinavia.
I don't know for sure, but I know that there were some in France, made in France. And I'm sure friction fit, not the locking, but the friction fit boxes, I mean, they're all over the place. It's just super common. You know, Asia, all the way across, a little box. But this type of lock, I'm not quite sure. And I haven't spent a lot of time researching it, just because I got other things to do. And I'm not so interested in the historical context, just for historical context. So, you know, when there's a dead end. I didn't talk about what I'm doing here, but I lined up the lid in the groove, and I made 2 marks for this little one. And so there's a trick
Just
with,
like in here.
yeah, there's a trick.
That one.
One of the things to make sure that is to not cut that all the way to the groove, because it'll be visible from the upward view. You want to make that ledge cut in, and then you want to take some of this off, and then it'll look nicer.
Etienne wanted to know if it's better to try if it fits before taking the mantle off.
You could, but you'd have to do all of this carving at the
With
end
a mandrel,
first,
yeah.
You know, with the mandrel on. Yeah, you could. You can also trim. You can trim this with a knife too, if it doesn't fit, and you can also trim underneath, which I might do underneath. So there's a couple things you could do to get it to fit. So you don't have to try to mess with it with the mandrel. Because if you were to cut these notches, you know, cut this all off, and then you wanted to return this to adjust, you might have problems. Because you're turning void, and it was so fragile the piece, it might be a real trick. I'd favor use your knife, your slide knife, to try to adjust after the fact. There's not one box that I really don't have to do some adjusting. This one I was pretty aggressive on, and it might just fit. It might just fit. Usually I have to do a lot of trimming. So I'll be pleased if that's the case.
Are there other unique pole lathe turned vessels you haven't explored but would like to see made?
Ooh, good question. Who asked that question?
Liam Culbertson.
Oh.
Oh, we have 2 minutes remaining. Oh,
Uh-oh.
I should end.
Yeah, you should.
What are you gonna do?
End.
Are we gonna start another one?
Done. Goodbye. Save it.
Do it again. Do one more time. Take it off and put it back on.
We don't want to lose it.
I know. Yay. Okay. See y'all later.